resumes, les resumes. What are they? CVs, curriculum vitae, whatever you call them. There are things that we use to get jobs, but I really feel like people misunderstand their purpose. A resume is to get you an interview. That's it. It's not there to exhaustively cover every single accomplishment you've ever had. It's not there to supposedly brag or whatever. So, what is in a good resume? And according to what I believe and what I've seen out there and lessons I've learned. So, I am going to tell a story here. I used to think that I had to have the absolute perfect resume. If the resume didn't cover every single thing I had done, had every accomplishment I had in it, I panicked that I was going to be, seen as a lesser than what I really was. And so I was overly stressed about the resume. Let me tell you why I think that the resume is not as important as I used to think it was, or that so many people stress. They stress about the resume. Once again, the sole purpose of the resume, the only reason for a resume is to entice the person reading the resume enough to get you an interview. That is it. That's the only reason. All right. Now, I'm going to follow that with something else that's going to be very controversial. Nobody cares about your resume. They just don't. The people that are actually required to read your resume, they're not going to read it. The only people who care about your resume is all the crappy recruiters on LinkedIn that are trying to get a copy of the resume from you so they can submit it and lock you in so that they get a percentage of the cut, even if you organize and get your job by yourself. So, by the way, be very careful who you give that resume to. You can make it public, but if you explicitly give the resume to a recruiter, you are licensing that recruiter to represent you in certain companies. And sometimes those recruiters, that's a separate video, but sometimes those recruiters will stop you from being able to even get the job yourself in some places. I know it's weird, but just trust me on this one. So what is the resume's purpose is to get you an interview. It's also, I want to be very explicit about this one. The resume's purpose is not to discover you. Can I say that again? The resume's purpose is not so that people can find you. And I promise you, all of that panic that you're feeling because everything you can possibly do is not crammed into your resume, all the right keywords, all the right technologies that you want to come up in a Google search that you want to hit so that you can be found, so that you can get that perfect job out there because some AI or some random search engine out there actually finds you and then sets up an interview for you and sends it all because it's all in your glorious resume. It's a total myth. Get over it. That is not what they are about, right? That is not what a resume is for. A resume is to give to HR and to the person with whom you have already set up an interview, okay? And I'm going to talk about this part a little bit longer than I should, even though it should really go in a separate video. The resume should be an afterthought, right? I mean, you should be summarizing what's in there. We'll talk about what goes into a good resume in just a bit, but the purpose, again, of the resume is to kind of give a conversational piece. If you think about, if you imagine yourself, if you role play, an overworked person who's been given the responsibility to interview you, which has been me on occasion, and they've got like 25 resumes, right? And you hear this all the time. Keep it one page. Don't go over. I don't care how much experience you have. And the truth is, it really is true because these overworked people who are being forced to read through these resumes to vet you or whatever, first of all, they're not going to read them. They don't care. I don't know how many times I have been in an interview where somebody asked me about something that was very specifically delineated in my resume because they hadn't read it. They didn't say, hey, I saw this thing here, because they scanned over. They don't read it. The people that are going to be interviewing you are not reading your resume. They're interviewing you for other reasons, and this is why I think it's so important that you know this about the process, because then you'll know that the resume is there. It's meant to be a really high level, like Rob's best, right? Like my best moments. That's what should go in your resume, high level. Your best absolute top moments. They should be, it's like your highlights reel, right? That's what goes in your resume. The resume, the main part of your resume is your highlights reel. That's the thing that someone's going, oh, whoa, oh, wow. So if they actually do scan it and see it, you want to put something in there that's like really flashy that they're going to see, and that's going to give them something to talk about, because that's the purpose of the resume. It's not to get you the interview. I mean, it is to entice the interview out of somebody. Like, yeah, let's give them an interview. Like, but honestly, that's not even the first thing it is the purpose. The purpose is to get an interview, but more specifically, it's to make that interview interesting once that you get the interview, right? And so you can imagine, like, you've made contact with, this is how it goes down, right? You've made contact with somebody, either through a recruiter, or you met somebody from a meetup or something like that, and they're like, oh man, yeah, it's like, yeah, you sound like a good fit for the job that we actually have right now that's open. It would be really great to have you. And like, and then that person who's not responsible for hiring you is going to say something like, yeah, could you give me a resume, and I'll upload it by my manager, right? This is how it goes down. This is how jobs go down. This is how jobs happen. And then they'll be like, so, well, I haven't updated it. That's fine, just whatever. And so you have this resume that you've been keeping up to date that's got your best hits in it, and you send that over right away before the moment dies. Right away, you have to have that resume ready right away, and that's the real thing that people don't do. You have to have the best hits kind of thing. We're making a video here. I'll be in a sec. So then you send that thing off to your buddy that you met at the meetup, and your buddy at the meetup takes that PDF or whatever and forwards that off to the manager. Now the manager hasn't seen you. The guy or girl who is responsible for hiring you, they don't know you. They just know that so-and-so who met you at this meetup thinks you're a really good position for this job, and they've recommended you. And they're like, well, the manager's like, well, since employment's all about trust, I trust this person, and this person is giving me a resume. And now that person's put themselves on the line by submitting their resume, because when you make a recommendation about somebody, sometimes you have to say, look, I don't know anything about them, but they seem like a nice person, right? No, usually you're making a referral just by giving the resume off to somebody and say, hey, boss of mine, here's somebody that might be a good fit for our team. I just wanted to let you know about them. You hand off the resume, and they're like, huh. And so that person's reading through the resume, and that is where the magic of the resume happens. They're reading your baseball card. They're reading your best of. They're reading your hits. And the person who has already referred you because you made a friendship with them has already given, produced a little bit of trust in this person. And the manager is looking at the resume going, damn, that's what you want. You want damn. And then you want them to think, well, what's this line item about? I need details here. And now the manager is incented to get you an interview. And so now you haven't even talked to HR yet. There's no HR in the process at all. There's no HR in the process. There's no HR. And the manager's like, yeah, we need to get this person in here and talk to them. And so let me set that up. And so maybe the manager says to the person who gave the referral that you met at a meetup that they set it up with HR, and they run down all the bureaucratic crap, which is always this, slog through the mud, no matter what. But because you've already made contact behind the scenes with all the people, and they've already got the trust, you've already greased all the wheels of that machine, and it's going to work. And so now your resume, now they'll say, well, and so that person will either give the resume to HR, or they'll say, hey, can you send a cover letter and send it to, we gotta have you officially apply to the HR so we can get you the interview. But yeah, you look really good and they want to meet with you. And then HR kind of is the last one to know. HR is the last one to know. HR is the one that gets told, hey, we want to interview this person for this position. Like, well, do you have that position posted? I'm like, well, not yet. And like, well, you need to post the position. So then they will post the position to HR for you, and then you go in and get it. They leave it out there publicly for like a mandatory amount of time legally for whatever reason. And so that other people can apply, but they already know who's going to apply because they know you're there. And they say, well, we got to do this thing, but you got to interview. And then they send you through the process. This is the stuff that no one will tell you about the hiring process. That's how it actually happens. And it's not, it's not, an nepotism. It's not, biased. It's not, it is the way things happen. People know a person, they're friends with them, they trust them, they recommend them, and then they get a job. That's exactly how I got this job. True story. I met somebody on Twitch because I was going through the transition after COVID. And they said, hey, it would be great to have you on our team. They took my resume to the manager. I had an interview. I went through the HR thing. I was hired. Seriously, that is exactly how it happened. And that's how it can happen for you. I truly believe that. I truly believe that can happen for you. I have seen people get jobs by going to meetups. I've actually facilitated 3 or 4 people getting jobs by going to a Linux meetup. I went to a Linux convention, the Southeast Linux Convention, Linux Festival, these last 4 days, and I met probably a dozen people, all amazing people. But that's how you get a job, and that's a separate video. The getting a job is not blasting the world with resumes on LinkedIn and everything and making sure it's absolutely perfect. It's got everything you ever going to do so that Google finds it. And so those HR reps, they don't care about you. The people who are going to look for your resume online, the AIs and the machines and all those things, they suck. They suck. The people who are looking to take your resume and they want to reach out to you and say, hey, can I represent you? And you don't know anything about them. They are the enemy, and you want to avoid them like the plague, because all they're trying to do is cash in on getting you a job you want to avoid them. You want to avoid those people like the plague. I'm serious. You want to find 1 or 2 recruiters maybe who are recommended by people you know in the industry. Again, and you're finding out who those people are. You've already been through the mentorship process. I mean, the submission of a resume is like pretty late in the game, right? So you definitely don't want to do that. You definitely don't want to do that late in the game. You definitely want at the beginning of the game, you want to have the context. You want to be building a professional learning network. So the resume is kind of an afterthought. A resume is your best hit. So what goes in the resume? The line items in the resume, I mean, any of the traditional resume formats are fine. It really doesn't matter as far as I'm concerned. I happen to maintain, let's talk about the resume specifically. I personally think it should be 1 page. Mine is 2. I think if you've got over 10 years of experience, you're probably okay doing 2 pages. However, there's a couple of criteria for the resume, in my opinion. The number one thing about the resume is it needs to be truthful, right? It needs to be truthful. It can't be an exaggeration. Number 2, the way you make it truthful and you make it impressive is you put metrics in it. That you don't say is a good learner. You say implemented 12-node Kubernetes lab in home lab to gain Kubernetes certification status, right? Lots of metrics. The more details, the better. People want details. They don't want fluff. Works well with people. No. Put, the facilitated, communications between 2 disparate teams that were having difficulty doing blah, blah, blah. Why? Again, the purpose of the resume is to promote conversation in an interview. That means when they see it, they want to hear the story. So tell a story about who you are. What are your best hits? Tell the story of you in the resume in specific terms, not abstract terms. And God, I cannot tell you how many resumes, that are just like fluffy crap and filled with keywords. They stuff it with keywords because they want it to pull up. And you're like, why do they put all those keywords in? You just wasted my time. Don't waste the person's time who's reading the resume. The resume should be, every single thing in the resume should be exciting. It should make them want to talk to you. And if you stuff the resume, the education section, this is why you don't need every single place you've ever been. But this is also the reason you should put things in there that other people might not tell you to put in there, such as passion projects. Everybody on the resume should have a project section. And it should say, here are the things I'm doing in specific detail to learn a thing. I'm pursuing, this certification over here. I completed Hack the Box at this level at this thing here. You know what I mean? It's like, so you do have an education section because you have to prove you have a degree to get a job usually. And in the education section, you can say, it's a kind of a toss-up about whether something should go in the education section or the project section. But if you list your projects, please make sure you do that. Publication stuff. If I'm speaking to potential technologists here. A font paragraph to make it rank in their crappy AI tool. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. The keywords are for the 0 pixel font paragraph to make it sort of. Yeah, if you look. In my opinion, if you are padding your resume to make it look good to an AI, you're also broadcasting to everybody that you have no idea how getting a job works, because it doesn't work through some AI finding your resume. That is not how employment happens. That's not just me saying that. That's Learn with Leon saying that, like practically yelling it into the mic. Employment happens by establishing trust, and trust, you can't thwart trust. You've got to figure out how to build that trust, whether it's through a recruiter or through a secondary person, or you meet somebody directly who's hiring, or you go through an internship and they get to see how awesome you are. That's how hiring happens. It doesn't happen with this cold calling crap. If you're going to cold call to get an understanding of what the job is about so that you can target that job and target individuals doing that job to be your potential mentors. Okay. And then the resume is just an instrument that is kind of the focal point of conversation that's being passed around. You want to make it easy to pass around. You want to make it easy to grok, to digest and easy to see. And make it easy to read, man. Don't get crazy. Use the serif font. People use sans serif fonts on the resume, and I'm like, hell no. This is a piece of paper that has to be read, right? So, all right, and then the last thing I'll say about resumes is tailor the resume for the job. So if the job is slightly different than another job, you should actually prepare, in my opinion, you should prepare a specific resume for every job you apply for, because it's just your highlights, right? So if you're applying for an infrastructure engineering job versus a back-end systems developer job, some of those things may be the same, but don't submit the same resume to both of those jobs. You can do both of those jobs. Sometimes it'll be the same job, but you should have two completely different resumes for that have your high points for that specific title that match one for one the job description. And you will eventually get to see the job description. Sometimes you don't even see the job description until after you got the job. It's happened, right? Because you met somebody, you had the interview, you got, damn, you're a really good person for this job. And then they say, oh, by the way, here's the HR posting for the job. And so, this, you definitely need to cater them. So then the question comes, well, I've done so many things. How do I keep track of them? And I have a story about this. This is why I hate LinkedIn. So at one point I made a huge mistake. I made a huge, monstrous mistake. I thought that LinkedIn could be my personal database of everything I've ever done, and that I could use it and I could extract from it the pieces that would go into a highly precise, specific resume for a specific role in a specific job application, right? I thought that I could, go to the API in LinkedIn and put it over here and have my CV or my resume generated from that data. You can't do it. You know why? Because LinkedIn locks down their API. Yeah, you guys I'm cattle fodder for LinkedIn. They have a tremendous API that's got a whole formatted way to summarize a person that is available to the people who mine you, but not to you. I was like, I'm never using that again. So there have been a number of structured data formats to put your resume, that you can use for resume. I happen to use, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but I happen to use, let me go show you really quick. Hub.com, rvxrob/cv. And mine is pretty long. The last one I did, I'll show you. But what you can do, and this is going to be our goal here. The goal here is to have structured data, the stuff that would go into your CV or your resume. And yes, I have a summary of, different titles that I've had. But again, this is not the resume, right? This is a database of all the stuff that I've done. And I'm not bragging here. I just want to show you that if you're like me and you want to make sure that you don't forget something cool that you did, you can maintain this sort of database, personal database, in the form of a YAML file. And yeah, it's pretty long. It goes all the way back to my mail stuff. Honest to God, it goes all the way back to my mail job. And this also has nice things that people have said about me. And I built my own database, and then from the database, we were able to generate, using this Gen.go program, we were able to take a thing and generate a markdown, an HTML file. And from that HTML file, we were able to generate a PDF. This is going to be a flashbang. I hope I don't break your eyes. I'm so sorry. So then I was able to generate this thing. Now, that is 2 pages long. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I just wanted you to see that the strategy for avoiding the feeling like, oh no, I'm going to forget something, is to maintain a personal database of your accomplishments. And that thing actually works for all kinds of reasons outside of it being a resume. It also is a thing that you can go back to if you maintain it. If you get commit pretty regularly to it, when you do something really amazing, you can pat yourself on the back and you can add a line item, a very specific line item, to your own personal database of cool stuff you've done. And then when you go to make the resume, you have this beautiful, structured data file that you can look at. You can even automate the creation by saying, I want this and this and this, right? But, just use Vim and copy it over. and you put that into a structured data file, and you generate a PDF from the structured data file if you want to be fancy. Otherwise, just write it in Word or whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is that all of those little cool things that you've been doing are captured in your own personal database of your awesomeness, and you can actually take a little moment to pat yourself on the back when you get a compliment from somebody. I actually keep in my data file nice things that people say about me. So, and the reason for that is because occasionally somebody will want to know a little bit more about you. They might want references, right? Well, I can instantly create a references page just from all the nice things that I've been keeping that people have sent me in Twitch, or they've said about me in email, or they've sent me and say, hey, can I put that in would you mind if I refer to that? And they're like, yeah. And plus it just makes you feel good. Like when you're feeling really bad about yourself, you can go back and read all the good things that you've done and the nice things people have said about you. So you can focus on that instead of the things that people are saying bad about you. So that all goes in your own personal database. In my case, I put it on a Git repo. I chose to make it public, and it's on GitHub. Now, the fact that if you're going to get discovered, it's going to be through GitHub. It's not going to be because of your resume. It's going to be because of GitHub if you're a technologist. So having your CV, in my opinion, having an open CV inside of GitHub is a really great place to go, because you can then combine that. You can actually use that to generate your, in my case, RWX Rob repo that matches. That's your landing page. You guys know about that, right? We're going to talk about landing pages separately, but so if GitHub has a special landing page that is the same name as your account. So if you go /RWX Rob, in my case here, there's your landing page. So this is the page, whatever is here. And I put other things in here too, some of which are completely out of date. I need to get rid of it. But the point is that becomes this page. Which is kind of your most important sign to show to the world. That's what people want to see about you. They want to see a summary of what your GitHub activity is, no matter what it is. If you're in technology, having an active GitHub is an essential requirement, in my opinion. And I think that's the way to do it. And that, even if that means that you're just keeping your active notes in your lab and the things you're experimenting with, maybe you keep your blog here so that people see updates to your blog and they see them get committed to your GitHub, and they can follow you and subscribe to you on GitHub, even if your final version of your blog gets pushed to Netlify or wherever, or just hosted on GitHub. People can follow your activity. This is the most important place. To do a separate video on this, but that's also where you should host your resume, or at least the data that's going to go into their specific resume that you're going to prepare when somebody says, okay, well, we need your resume to get the interview. I already talked to them. They want to interview you, but they'd like to see a resume. I'm like, okay, boom, get them a resume in 10 minutes before the iron gets cold, as they say, and they've got it. They've got your resume. They want to see you because it's got your best hits on there, and you're like, damn, this is cool. So this video has been longer than I wanted, but the major takeaways from this are resumes are to create conversation in an interview, both to promote the getting of the interview, but mostly to get people excited about you so you can talk about the interview. They're not there to waste people. People don't care about your resume. Nobody cares about your resume. You're the only one. So do not stress about your resume. You're the one who's going to say, oh my God, if my resume is not good, I'm not going to get a job. No, your resume just needs to be your best hits. But you should have already done most of the work to get the job. And the resume is just there to seal the deal and to get the interview and to create conversation in the interview, right? So don't let that be a source of worry for you. People overly stress about the resumes like crazy. And by the way, if you have a mentor, which you should at this point, because we talked about that already way long ago, then your mentor's going to be able to look over your resume. Damn, that looks really good. And they'll be able to give you feedback on your resume without having a job interview. If your mentor maybe even going to get you a job sometimes your mentor is in the career and has contacts with people. So again, the resume is secondary or tertiary to you getting a job compared to all the other things. It should be one page. It should be your best hits. It should be drawn on a regular, a structured database of everything you've ever done that you maintain separately and preferably on GitHub, so people can be notified when you have something cool to say. Wouldn't it be cool if everybody who's following you on GitHub saw that you added a nice comment to somebody made a nice comment about you on your live stream and you put that on there, and now everybody on GitHub just got notified that somebody made a nice comment about you because they're following your GitHub. That's the reason to put GitHub as the source for the data that goes into the resume. But again, the resume is just coming from the data like that. I call it a brag sheet. I call it a brag sheet all the time. That's usually what I deliberately refer. I'm glad you mentioned that, Patrick Close. I've called it that in previous years, the brag sheet. The brag sheet is just a way of just like making sure that you have something to brag about at the end of the year. And so even that database, by the way, we should do a separate video on that, because the resume is just one manifestation, one view of the data. If you know data science and databases and stuff, you have the database and then you have different views into the database, right? The resume is one specific, very short view into that data. If you wanted to do a full-blown CV because you're going to academia or something like that, you could do that. You could have multiple views into your little database. And I think it should just be structured data because you can edit with the file. Materialized view, yeah. There are people who do it in different ways. There are people who get downright crazy and make their own personal database. I think that's pushing it. Some people say, well, aren't you going to use the data model? There's already resume. There's already .js. There's like a ton of models. They all suck. So you develop your own model for what you should think to go in there. I personally prefer YAML because it's so readable as it is, and I can maintain it really easy. If it's hard to maintain, if I have to spin up my database or my database goes down, or I have to back up my database or something like that, I'm not going to maintain it. But if I maintain it as a structured data file, which is why we have to cover structured data before we do this, then I think it's just easier. It's easier for you to maintain. It's easier for anybody to see. If somebody wants to summarize your database, they can just scan down the file. They don't have to set up the whole database and everything. People over-engineer things all the time. So we will do a separate several videos about how to make that structured data file. That is the resume, or the personal data file is going to be the project that we do to learn YAML and to learn later on Go and some of the things in order to generate the thing. So there'll be other videos on that. All right, is that enough? Is that enough? Okay.